This is the story of the Inca. Where they came from? Supposedly, Lake Titicaca, the largest navigable lake in the world. They could have come from the island of the sun in the lake, or possibly even from the island of the moon. But more likely they came from Tiwanaku, south of Lake Titicaca, where we find the famous Sun Gate. And nearby is Pumapunku, a much older site destroyed by cataclysm. Here we find evidence of engineering and power tools, possibly 20,000 years ago, and incredibly ornate carved and sculpted blocks that interconnect, as well as cranial elongation. The Inca had short hair. Unlike the famous depictions where they show that they have long black hair, this is not the case. They came from Tiwanaku through the Sacred Valley and founded Cusco. This is the Coricancha, the first building they supposedly built. However, the stone for this came from 60 kilometers away and is probably much older than the Inca, built by an ancient culture 20,000 years before. This is what the Coricancha looked like at the time of the Spanish, and these amazing areas where molten metal was poured to hold the stones together. This is possibly the most beautiful and well-sculpted building in the world, with this amazing stone container in the center, one solid block. Energy lines came out from the Coricancha. And here you see how precise and amazing the construction is. You can see different levels of construction in the stone. And it's said that the Inca had elongated skulls. You can see 3 different levels of construction. The smoothest is the oldest, and here every stone is of a different size and shape and actually forms animal figures. This is a puma, that's its head. That is its paw. And that is the head of a snake, the body moving to the left. This is not in Peru, this is in Japan, showing that it could have been a Pacific-wide culture, sailing thousands of years ago. And here at Sacsayhuaman, the largest stones in Peru. Some of them, like this one where I am, 120 tons. And other anomalies here. These perfectly sculpted shapes in andesite stone, hard as granite, not made with Inca tools. This is called the Chicana, or the tunnel. And all of these carved steps seem to have no function. Could it have been a quarry? And were these the thrones of the Inca? But again, the Inca did not have the technology to carve and cut that kind of stone. In the center at the bottom of this is where there's a tunnel. All over Cusco we find these amazing stones that have been cut in ancient antiquity because of the amount of weathering on the surface. This is called Amaru Machai, the cave of the serpents. And inside you can see the polished walls. This is vitrification by fire or some kind of intense heat, not by polishing. And no one really knows who built this. It was not the Inca. Again, this is called the Temple of the Monkeys. You see the flat surfaces. And almost everywhere, these serpent shapes. This is Kenko. This is a labyrinth, partly natural, partly shaped. And this temple structure in the center. This is in a side valley of the Sacred Valley. Immaculate construction. And this doorway, thousands of man-hours of work, one would suspect, But what would have been its function, and who could have made it? This is at Ollantaytambo. We see 3 different ages of construction. We see the terraces made by the Inca, and then above we see older construction towards the Temple of the Sun. Giant granite blocks, perhaps 40 tons, lay strewn about. And these seats, carved out of andesite. This one, and again, red granite blocks. This was filming with the Ancient Alien series in April of 2011. And this is a keystone cut where molten metal was poured to hold stones together. This is what remains of the Great Wall of the Temple of the Sun. And these narrow channels are what help to keep the whole structure together. The Inca came later and put these giant stones into place, but they were not the builders, nor were they the maker of whatever this structure was. Could it have been a sundial? So much work for such a simple function? Beyond Ollantaytambo, at least the central part, we find the Temple of the Condor. And again we see evidence of amazing machine-like accuracy. Maybe these people did have machines. Cut blocks that fit into the surrounding strata. And again, these cut-out shapes out of andesite as hard as granite. Across the valley, an amazing structure. This is Tanupa, the great teacher, a stone head 450 feet tall. And this, of course, is Machu Picchu. Could that, in the background, be a face? Is it natural, or partially carved or sculpted? In the deep, distant past, we don't know. The Inca were great at building terraces, like these andene here. But this they couldn't have made because it took technology of some kind. And these beautifully fit together granite blocks, inside of which we see a carved surface. Much, much older. You can see the carving lines on it. But who made it? The famous Temple of Three Windows. See the megalithic construction. And this resonating chamber, if you emit a sound, it vibrates. On the way up to the Intihuatana, or the hitching post of the sun, this is the top of a mountain. It's not simply a piece of stone. It's the top of the mountain itself, and the corners point to different mountains. Here we see 3 distinct styles of building that couldn't have been done by the same people. On top of Huayna Picchu in the background, elaborate terraces and buildings, and the view of Machu Picchu looking down, the shape of a giant condor. And then we have cranial elongation and deformation. Was it all done by the use of boards and strings like this shows? Were these the Inca themselves with elongated skulls? And was this actually the technique that was used to do that? Or were some of them natural in shape? The Inca seem to have been bald, perhaps showing off their elongated skulls. This is a fetus. And this is a baby. The fetus could not have been done by cranial manipulation. Again, we go back to the Tiwanaku people. And before the Tiwanaku people were the Paracas. They were coastal dwellers, directly west of Cusco. This is one of their buildings. There are 30 of these in the immediate area. They look like mountains. And this is the famous astronaut, made by the Paracas. You see the line cutting through the animal shape. The Paracas made the animal shapes. The Nazca people made the lines. The lines were made later. And this is a Paracas person at the Paracas History Museum. The Paracas were also responsible for this, the candelabro, 600 feet tall, at least 3,000 years old, if not older. Was it a wayfinding mechanism? You can only see it from the ocean, far off. It seems to have been a navigational marker. This is how the Paracas people buried their dead, very elaborate for a so-called primitive culture. And each family had a tomb like this. Paracas is on the coast of Peru, as you can see by the red arrow. And these people knew probably how to sail. Totora reeds have been found there. These are the largest skulls in the world, and they're Paracas people. 2.5 times the cranial volume of the average human. This could not have been done by cranial manipulation. These are natural skulls, possibly a subspecies or a lost kind of human being, the remnants of a forgotten culture, a forgotten civilization. In the back of the museum, I photographed these ones. They have at least 50 in their collection. At Paracas, we have these in our collection. Notice the holes in the back of the skull where nerves and veins came out to feed the skull. Another example of one of these royal people. And again, the holes in the back where the nerves and the blood vessels came out. And this one is most intriguing because it only has 2 cranial plates. The average human, or all humans, have 3, but this one only has 2. And it's not the only one. We have seen several like this. And this is a mummified elongated skull. She has red hair and it's short, showing off the fact that she had an elongated skull. My books are available through www.hiddenincatours.com and as well through Amazon, Lulu, and other sources.